Okay, this video is going to be on the buyer brokerage agreement, and this just is a new form that came out January of 2024. So I'm going to go over it. I'll probably just talk in general terms. So if you have specific questions, of course, reach out to me, but I just want to explain more about what this form means, and it is required by law now that every buyer has a buyer brokerage agreement before any offer is made. Actually, it should be happening before showings are happening. So again, if you have questions specific to this, please feel free just to reach out to me. But we'll kind of go through it together. So this right here is where you would put I will put the buyer brokerage's firm, which would be my firm. Here's where you would put your information. And then this is if we want to specify areas. I like to leave it blank just because sometimes we start in one area and end up in another. The term of the agreement is defaults to 60 days, and we can, alter that as needed. The agency, this is kind of an important part here. So buyer brokerage firm appoints, so it'd be myself here as the broker to represent the buyer, which would be you. The agency relationship, I always choose exclusive unless there's a reason why we choose non-exclusive. This basically means that you're not able to enter into another agency relationship with another agent during the time of our agreement for obvious reasons. Takes a lot of time and effort to, show homes and write offers and do all that. So it's a mutual exclusive relationship. This right here is called buyer broker as limited dual agent. So what this means is that if I had a listing and you as the buyer wanted to write an offer on it, initialing this right here says that yes, I can represent you and the seller, and that both people will know that I am representing both. Compensation. So this is the part where people have the most questions. So again, I'm just going to talk in general terms. But it says buyer acknowledges that there's no standard compensation rates. That the compensation in this agreement is fully negotiable and not set by law. The compensation for buyer brokerage's firm services shall be. So basically right now, and you can look it up if there's a property you're interested in, you can see what the seller is offering for a compensation for the buyer's broker. Sometimes it's 2.5%, sometimes it's 2%. But basically we'll put a number in here and says if buyer broker is a limited dual agent, then that number will go here. So basically what this means is, for example, let's say that we're looking at properties and they're offering a 2.5% commission. So that would mean, and if this number here said 2.5, then that would mean that there's nothing we really need to do. So down here, it does talk about how the seller is compensating. So it says a seller may, but not required, to offer compensation to a firm for representing buyer in the purchase of seller's real property. Seller's offer is disclosed in the listing. As I stated earlier, you can actually, as the buyer, even see what the seller is offering. Shall be stated in the purchase and sale agreement and may be accepted by buyer on behalf of firm in the purchase and sale agreement. So there's a few options here. The first is seller's offer is equal to compensation. So if seller's offer is equal to the compensation, buyer shall accept seller's offer and buyer shall not be obligated to separately pay the firm. So for example, if we pop back up here, 2.5%, let's say that the seller is offering a 2.5% commission, then that means there's nothing we need to do. We just move forward with our offer. This says seller's offer is greater than the compensation. So if seller's offer is greater than the compensation, let's say the seller is offering 3%, for an example, the buyer shall accept the seller's offer and buyer shall not be obligated to separately pay the firm. The amount of seller's offer that is greater than the compensation shall be. So there's a couple options: paid to the firm, credited to the buyer, credited to the seller, or other. So the next option is if seller's offer is less than the compensation. So let's say that the seller is only offering a 2% commission and you and I have agreed to a 2.5% commission. So what happens here is there's a couple options. So pay the balance of the compensation to the firm at closing. Request the seller pay the balance of the compensation to firm as part of buyer's offer to purchase the property. So I always check this box. And this is my first choice, of course, is to try to get the seller to compensate what we agreed upon if for some reason they're offering less of a commission. And since commissions are fully negotiable, this is fine. We would just write it in the offer. There's a form for that as well. So that is sort of what has people the most confused, is kind of how this works. But we're always going to try to get the compensation to be paid from the seller. But what they're trying to do is decouple the commission, so it's more transparent that, you know, buyers are paying for their representation now and sellers are paying for their representation. So basically compensation after expiration, so within 60 days, let's say you purchase a home that I showed you, there would be a commission due to me for that. This all here down here is pretty self-explanatory. Buyer broker shall, if not checked, be obligated to show properties to buyers for which there's no seller's offer for compensation. So again, that's something that we can decide. If there's no compensation being offered, then it will just be disclosed that, you know, I will not be showing properties that are offering zero. Yes, and if you're doing a VA loan, it says due to VA regulations, if buyer is obtaining VA financing, the compensation must be paid by the seller. So if you're a VA, then that means you will not be paying compensation to, if you're using VA financing, you're not going to be paying compensation to the buyer's broker, myself. So this here is pretty self-explanatory, but I think that's the part that gets people the most confused, is kind of this compensation. But if you have questions, of course, please feel free to reach out to me. I'm happy to go over in detail. Every situation's a little bit different, but this will give you an idea as to what you can expect.